Hey, welcome back, party people. We are gonna be doing another part of Let's Play in History. We're gonna continue this. We're gonna figure out what the heck we're gonna be doing. Ooh, my boy, Peter. We don't spend enough time together.
So, word on the street is that the Admiral's got a massive shipment of artisan sodas. I thought we could throw a couple back, like...
I'm sorry. There's way too much like interpersonal stuff with in this game that I think some people would enjoy, but I don't know. I just I'm just indifferent too.
Any good ones?
Well, my Asgardian is quite rusty, but I suppose I could try. Of course, I would need some sort of goblet to throw
But I
into
mean,
the mirror.
he basically travels the world. Teddy Roosevelt, I'm saying, goes to Egypt,
I go first just to set a nice safe benchmark. So, what
travels all across Europe, Italy.
There is more than one
Um,
Oh, yeah.
refuses to meet the Pope because of Methodist sympathies, I guess, or things that are going on.
Radioactive locking band.
Becomes really good buddies with Andrew Carnegie, who actually financially supports a lot of what Roosevelt's gallivanting all across the world, specifically expeditions. Goes to Germany, Great Britain. Goes to Africa, gets sick. The heck is that gift shop? Is a gift shop in the common room? Is that what it said? I want to buy gifts.
Evildoers beware.
Hey, you know what sucks?
What?
Having your weapon manifest out of your chest. Feels weird.
Can't take her seriously, to be honest with you.
Tell me about its properties.
Well, to summon it, I need to use my own blood. Pretty metal, right?
Blood does contain iron, yes.
Good thing I'm not queasy. Yeah, that would make me a pretty bad blood witch.
Why do you bleed?
That's just the price I pay. To top it all off, my staff only responds to a spell once.
So you must be decisive with your castings?
That's putting it lightly. I don't like to have a staff bursting from my chest like a baby alien for nothing.
Is it sentient?
Well, it has a name. A staff of one, and it's listed.
Now, after being away for a couple years, he comes back to the United States, by the way. I'm sorry, she's just really boring, and I'm just, I don't really care.
Noted.
But,
Thank you for letting
he comes back to the United States, Teddy Roosevelt, and there's a schism. Teddy doesn't like the way William Howard Taft is running the country. Again, my issue with Teddy is he's just so interventionist in everything, and
Hey, can I ask a favor? Thanks, Harvey.
pretty much tries to intervene in everything that forceful knockback.
Ready to
Sweet
fight some
Peter, yeah, buddy. Woo-hoo. I mean, he intervenes in everything. Truly just intervenes in everything. I mean, he's so radical, he actually teams up with William Jennings Bryan at one point to force judicial recall and give the power to the federal government to recall judges. You know, the thing that I think is completely antithetical to the separation of powers. How did that happen? Okay. Complete 3 missions with Nico. Damn it. Anyways. He's very hypocritical because he's like, we can't split the Republican Party. We can't split the Republican Party and let Democrats win, yada yada yada. But then he literally, and not Democrats, but Democrats and progressives win. But then quite literally, specifically, ends up creating a third party, the eventual Bull Moose party, and is the literal reason why Woodrow Wilson eventually ends up just a gift shop. Yes. Can I buy more stuff? Let me buy more stuff. Ugh.
Nice to get some presents.
Let's see if you're as good.
Okay.
Take it to the next level. We need any advantage we can get.
I think we need to do another story mission. No, but it costs less.
Innovation. That's the start point.
I can dig that. Okay. I think it's time for another story mission. We gotta continue actually getting through this freaking game. Look, this game's fun. I'll admit that. It's just incredibly tedious and not something that I usually like, and something that I'm not. Good Lord. That I'm not genuinely used to.
Put a priority on Thanks, Hunter.
Okay. What we're gonna do is another story mission. Let my dog stop barking. Alright. Let's do this. Okay.
As if the people of New York didn't have enough problems, scattered reports of Hydra activity are coming in across the board.
Ooh, this looks pretty spooky.
Hydra forces in this area are causing trouble. Let's take them down.
As they say, no problem.
Wow, already. In that case. Alright. Okay. You're probably asking, why did this all happen? There's so many things that go on that is very specifically difficult to articulate, that I think deserves its own full-blown conversation, because it is way too difficult to articulate what happens. There's so many moving pieces: communists, progressives, liberals, conservatives. They're all fighting for each other. Media's huge aspect within all this that's creating so much difficulty for everyone to try to figure out what's truth and what's not truth. And I'll put it this way, and then just the personal schism, because it seems like, above all else, Teddy just didn't like the way that it just seemed like Teddy did not like the way that William Howard Taft was just running the country, because I think he specifically saw him as someone who wasn't really doing anything, when I think most people would probably just say he was just governing very, very conservatively and didn't want to overstep the boundaries of the presidency and didn't want to overdo it effectively. But there's a bunch of different people at this time. Robert La Follette, big Republican senator at the time, progressive senator. I believe he's a progressive senator. Might be getting my people mixed up at this point. But he's antagonistic to pretty much everything. There's like different sects of the Republican Party that are all splintered so much that actually Democrats end up winning the House for the first time in 30 years, or 20 years, something crazy like that. This is also when Franklin Delano Roosevelt actually gets into office, by the way, FDR. And pretty much everyone's just fighting for one another, or fighting against one another, to a point that it's just objectively so detrimental to... What am I doing? Let's do that and kick your butt. Do I have a heal? Redraw you. Really? Redraw you. How much health do you have? There we go. That's what I'm trying to do. Okay. And Teddy in particular is both dumb and smart, because he's basically just doing whatever he wants to do. That's really just the only way to put it. He's just basically, I'm going to get Taft out of office no matter what, and I'm going to do it in the way that I see fit, and I'm going to do it in the way that is probably going to piss off a lot of people, but you know what? So be it. You chose this Taft. And it gets to the point, again, where he ends up creating a third political party, which is effectively the Bull Moose Party. Yeah, let's just end this. And Taft, for his own various different reasons, is very unpopular. I think in part because following Teddy Roosevelt and his incredible invasiveness of his presidency is the complete opposite of what Taft ultimately does, but I'll explain that when I get to him. And it's basically Woodrow Wilson, Taft, and Teddy, and they're all campaigning against one another. Because initially he runs for the Republican primary. Ooh, Sabretooth. So that means Wolverine's coming. But basically we have the Republican convention happening, and long story short, because I've talked about Teddy quite a bit already, Taft wins. Not decisively, but he wins decisively enough that Teddy, or closely enough that Teddy denounces the convention and then creates his new party. Part of it, apparently, I believe, was a lot of the Southern whites and Southern blacks in particular, voting heavily for William Howard Taft. Now, Teddy's popular. He's just a force of nature. When the election does occur, he actually wins a lot for a third party. I think the most plurality votes percentage, electoral votes, a third party candidate has ever had, largely. I think other than maybe Ross Perot. But, I mean, complete the mission. Oh, so we gotta go fast. Okay. Don't think. Just attack. Ooh, but I get Wolverine. Does it look like I get 4 people? Logan. Jeez. Get back up, Logan.
Should do the trick.
Maybe they should call me the hunter. I'll put my scorecard against yours anytime.
Knock it off.
All right, now I'm engaged, people. This is how you get me back into this.
This one has the sting of death on it. The past filled with the suffering of innocent victims.
Dude, Wolverine might be a little overpowered. Not gonna lie. I mean, I'm not complaining, but good lord.
Really starting to grind my gears.
Who needs health more, me or him? Let's heal Wolverine. Might wake him up too.
Hope you're ready.
God, I really hope Wolverine's this powerful and not just because this one little section.
I was hoping for a challenge. I should have known better.
Is that your best shot? Got some backup coming.
Wolverine may be terse, but at least he is not a cold-blooded killer.
Bad luck for you, bud.
I've got all the heals I need. You must admit
Okay, let's do this.
Their best is still not enough for us.
Down, son. But I don't think he's just out yet. I think he's got like another life, so I'm gonna try and take these guys. What is this? I'm gonna leave that for now.
Now for something real special. You're not the first to try that.
More of them are joining the fight.
The hell for what? Now,
You make an excellent partner.
Let's just make sure you're down.
never gets the job done.
Is that the end? Oh, that is the end. Sweet.
looks like you got me right. Go ahead. Make it quick.
What the hell are you doing?
Not much of a hunter, are you? You fit right in with Logan and the rest of Xavier's housebroken little pets.
Okay, anyways. this is also where Teddy, when he's running, has an assassination attempt against him. He's doing a campaign event speech in Milwaukee, gets out of the car, gets shot. I gotta be honest, it's crazy. I guess the bullet he's shot in the chest. He shoots through a 50-page folded copy of his speech. And what happened specifically was he gets shot. Guy comes from the crowd, shoots him. The security detail beats him up, holds him, captures him, and Teddy's basically looking at him just like, hold him still, I need to talk to him. After getting shot, by the way, goes over them, and he's like, why would you do this? Why would you do that? And the guy is just like looking at him like, who are you? How are you alive? And then Teddy just shoos him away to prison. He's like, get him out of here. He's not going to talk. And then he goes to do the speech in the backstage, finds that he's bleeding. There's a bullet in his chest. He starts feeling it. He's like, interesting. Just a scratch, basically. Pulls it out, goes onto the stage with a bloodied chest and bloodied copies of paper, and he goes onto stage and basically says, ladies and gentlemen, I have been shot, but it'll take more than a bullet to kill a bull moose. And people just roar in basically just champion him, like, oh, this is a guy, oh my god. Does the full 90-minute speech. They basically say, his people are basically like, we need you to go to a hospital. And he declines. He's like, no, I'm gonna get my speech. I don't think it pierced my lungs, so I think I'm okay. And what's funny is that as a big fan of X-rays, for those of you who don't know the history, William Rankin, I can't pronounce his name, creates X-rays on accident around the late 1890s, ends up becoming a big thing, although they didn't know the devastating impacts that X-rays would have on people, especially around those times. Because basically back then, when a lot of people were doing their X-rays and testing it out, they were like X-ray various parts of their body over and 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 over again, and not a lot of people knew the actual physical effects of electromagnetic radiation when it comes to affected what happens to you, over long periods of time. Cumulatively. So like imagine, I think one of the first people to die was like his assistant, who ends up getting basically radiation poisoning because he ends up taking the equivalent of like a lot of X-rays just to test it out, and ends up dying of radiation poisoning basically. And you should see some of the pictures of people who like had their hands X-rayed over and over and over and over again, and see the deterioration of it. Today it's very safe. In relative comparison, they use like almost like 1/100th or 1/1000th of the dose in comparison to back then, because everything's digital now. So we use the most minimal amount of radiation, and everything is reconfigured digitally after that. And really cool, by the way. So I think people should look more into that, especially since that is my line of work. But Teddy Roosevelt actually gets one of the first notable chest X-rays. Ends up having the bullet lodged in his chest, which would be there for the rest of his life. Because of what ends up happening, he wins a lot of the vote. But because Republicans are largely going to be voting for mainly Teddy, he splits the vote between the Republican Party and the Bull Moose Party, which he does purely out of spite. If I'm just going to be brutally honest with you, purely out of spite. I will also say this. It's not like Teddy didn't believe in a lot of the things that Woodrow Wilson believed in. I don't think he was like a globalist order kind of person like Woodrow Wilson, but certainly someone who was much more of an interventionist kind of individual. And I'll just go out and say it's just because of this, Woodrow Wilson wins a surprising victory. Roosevelt gets about 30% of the vote. Taft gets about 25%, something like him.
Mark my words.
I'll go a little dark this time for her, because I think she likes the darker, edgier version of me. Yep. And Woodrow Wilson only actually gets a total of about 40% of the overall vote, but he wins a massive landslide electoral victory, over 400 electoral votes, versus Teddy winning about 100, and Taft I think only wins one state. That's basically how it goes, people.
Having Sabretooth wrapped up in all of this is another headache we don't need. Can only hope Logan handles him swiftly.
Now, after this, he's like, whatever, I'm done with politics again. I came back for 2 years and I screwed up America. I'm just gonna go to South America. I'm gonna go to the Amazon River.
Too much else to worry about.
He ends up getting malaria, tropical fever. What they initially thought was just a regular tropical fever, but he's actually left so disheveled to a point where he was actually thinking about committing suicide via excessive amounts of morphine. His son went with him, actually. One of his youngest sons went with him, and ends up persuading him not to kill himself. At one point, he ended up losing like 60 pounds during the entire trip. Especially on the way back, he just was disheveled in relative comparison.
Hunter, if you're receiving this message, please come to the central console as soon as possible.
That's odd.
My guy even sleep? Oh. Oh. Is Bruce here? Oh.
Dr. Banner, re-emerged.
I'm sorry, Hunter. Probably not the best impression of me. But now I'm back.
And we are happy to have you back, Doctor.
Anyways, his final years largely amount to the period of World War One. He passes away right after World War One, but he's actually pleading with Woodrow Wilson to let him fight in the war, because all his sons fight in the war. One of them actually dies, unfortunately, in the war. He was a pilot, ends up getting shot down, and which was unfortunate. I think that was his youngest son too, Quentin. They actually revered him, the Germans, because the Germans basically were like, any former leaders, king's or president's son to fight in the war is probably a good man and a just man to fight alongside the regular people, But Woodrow Wilson, at least having some common sense, was like, no, you're like 60, Teddy. I'm not sending you to the front lines. You're nonsense, bro. Don't do this. You're stupid. He does try to make amends with his family, although it's complicated, and his daughter still doesn't really like him. But ultimately, he's someone who tries to fix a lot of the things that ultimately are problems he caused in his life. And Teddy passes away pretty shortly after. I will say this: he was a big individual who helped promote the League of Nations at the end of his life. Although he criticized Woodrow Wilson's 14 points, calling them somewhat nonsensical and not the view that he would have done or taken in terms of his actions towards in terms of his actions towards the world stage. I actually think, if anything, he was probably much more, we need to be everywhere as Americans and dominate the political scene. And I will say, though, once he does passes away in his sleep, the famous line, the only way that the Grim Reaper could take him was in his sleep, because Teddy was not going to allow that to happen if he was awake. And then you see some famous memes nowadays of like Grim Reaper showing up to try and get Teddy Roosevelt, but he's hiding in the closet in the shadows, you know. It's just funny. I like those little pictures. Teddy's a very complicated person. I think the idealized vision and picture of Teddy is what we as Americans should always strive to be, without a doubt. But I don't think that's entirely who Teddy was, though, which is probably my biggest issue with Teddy Roosevelt and how we look at him historically. Because people put these little facts out there about him, like, oh, he did this, oh, he did that, he's a great person. But it's like, you know, just the more you dig in, even little bit by little bit, it's not the complete story. And if anything, it's not entirely accurate to what is ultimately historically being portrayed, and I don't think that's fair. Not to say that he's a bad person, not to say that he isn't an impressive individual. He truly is an impressive individual in his own right. I just think a little bit more honesty, a little bit more truth in everything would go really a long way in fixing a lot of the things, and actually making sure that, you know, we're more fair and accurate in our assessments of these world leaders and these people and these great historical figures, you know. Like, because when it comes to Teddy, it sounds, you know, too good to be true, and the truth is that, yeah, it kind of is too good to be true for Teddy, because he's just not that guy, you know. Not to say, again, he's a bad person, just, it's not the entire truth. And I think, if we're going to be honest, the more we actually get to the entire truth, the more we can have, I think, a fair vision and honest view of these particular people. And I'd rather have that than some fake facade figure, you know what I mean?
Look at that map. We've got emergencies all over the globe.
Hydra is staying true to its multi-headed namesake. Currently active in New York, Paris, Moscow, Singapore, Los Angeles. This list keeps growing.
They caught us off guard. We'll put them back in check.
With what, Tony? Avenger forces are spread thin as it is.
Temporarily. Back in contact with Banner, and we still have the tower.
And that's supposed to make us feel better? We thought we had the sanctum until we didn't.
I'm sorry, Stephen, but your overrated metaphysical library is not my state-of-the-art militarized tower.
It will hold what? Your ego? You'll need a taller tower.
Oh, coming from the man who literally calls himself supreme.
Ooh, Quippy Strange and Quippy Stark.
We waste arguing, Hydra takes another bite out of
Yeah,
our ass.
fine. Then let's stop arguing and take a bite out of their ass. Yeah, let's just stop arguing.
Alright, guys. I'm going to stop it here for right now. We'll come back soon. God bless. Y'all rock. Have a good one, y'all. Like and subscribe.